Welcome back. This is, in my opinion, the worst map in the entire game. Worse than snow shoveling, worse than Kitsune Lair, worse than the elevators, all of it. Thankfully, this is the final paralogue we have to do for this run, which means we'll be able to play the story missions in the next episode. The other bright side is that this is the last faceless only map in this game. I'm sure everyone is sick of these, as this is the 4th video in this series alone that has been nothing but weak faceless enemies. Before beginning, Kana will promote into a Hoshido Noble. She's not going to be invested into much further than this because I do want her to keep Dragonstone access for her personal skill, so she'll mostly be just a filler combat unit. So what makes this map so much more of a pain to go through than the other faceless maps? Unlike the others, this map has waste tiles everywhere. Waste tiles reduce the movement of your units aside from Takumi and flyers, and they also reduce your avoid. This makes the map take forever to actually traverse, and since the objective of the map is to rout the enemy, you actually do have to go everywhere and kill all of them. Even more annoying is that there are enemies on literally all corners of the map, and there are stairs scattered throughout the map that spawn reinforcements in the later turns. The map also pushes you to grab Hisame quickly, which is really annoying since he's in the dead center of the map. Even when you do recruit him with Hinata, he then has the problem of being unable to get out of his position anyways thanks to the waste tiles surrounding him completely. This map is the true definition of monotony. Even with the most brain-dead way of clearing the map being undeploy most units except for Corrin and Ryoma with spirit katanas equipped, it still takes forever to actually get through the map thanks to the sheer amount of enemies that you have to face on top of the constant movement restrictions forcing you to take very lengthy paths to your next destination. And there really isn't a reward to gain from it like the others. Mozu's map is at least good for early support grinding and experience. Chapter 20 at least has a lot of good loot and infinite experience if you need it. And Rjajat's Paralogue also has infinite experience, on top of giving you probably the most powerful Gen 2 unit in the entire game. That's not to say Hisame can't be made good. He can, like all the others in the game, but for all the hoops that you have to jump through for him to not only get good enough to be a carry, but even just to recruit him makes it one of the least worthwhile things to do. He doesn't even really have that many fun options for meme potential like Selkie does, who I think is the only Gen 2 unit that contends for being worse than him. His position is just unfortunate. For this challenge, it's very lucky that there's an open safe tile to the right of Hisame. This allows for what I'm doing here, having Hinata paired with Shigure to fly over to Hisame and recruit him. The Faceless are weak enough to where even Hinata would be okay taking one hit from the Faceless, but the fact that he doesn't have to do that is way nicer. Hisame is going to promote into Master of Arms. Like Kiragi, he is going to just fill out his support requirement and then instantly get benched. That said, he will have to stick around for a very long time regardless, since he needs to get 7 maps with Kana for their S support. This map covers the first one, and then he has to be deployed for chapters 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and 26. He may as well be considered a mainstay because of that. By the way, we're about to go back into the story missions. We've been in this paralogue chain for so long that even my newer units, like Selkie, are way ahead of the curve for birthright standards. So does that just make the rest of the game free? I would say that's true for chapters 21 and 22, but once we hit chapter 23, we're going into the difficulty spike. I already briefly covered this in chapter 20, but Camilla is going to be at least in the top 3 most difficult maps for this whole challenge. It would be a lot easier to explain why when we get to the map itself, but for those of you that are familiar with how the late game of Birthright goes, you'll know why I've been so wary of it. Another map that I think will maybe be the most difficult map in the entire run is Chapter 27. In that map, there are large clumps of the most powerful enemies in all of Birthright on a map with 0 obstacles. Thanks to not being allowed to pair up, I have no choice but to just hope that the enemies will behave the way I want them to on that map, as it's most prone to being a random enemy movement nightmare. Unfortunate that it's right at the end too. I've been getting a little bit ahead of myself though. Focusing on the now, I've been trying to get a lot of goals done on this map to make the most out of the final Paralogue. The first goal that I'm working towards is of course all the supports on this run. The most important thing here is that I'm going to get Shiro and Midori's S support on this map, and I'm also going to get Kana's started with Hisame's. Kana in particular also really wants some extra training since she's so new to the army, which is why I've given her the Spirit Katana. This lets her push forwards really hard with Hisame and will allow her to get caught up with the rest of my units in pretty much no time. The other important goal that I've been working on is Sakura's Lance rank. I want her to be able to hold the Bolt Naginata before I go back into the story missions because that will allow her to use her magic stat without needing to take a scroll for herself. A problem that I've noticed about this run more than really anything is that the weapons are spread out very thinly. Because of the fact that every unit is being used without pair-up means that I can't just equip someone with a weak weapon and keep them as a backpack. They need to be able to meaningfully contribute to the map, which oftentimes means that they're being properly trained. The problem is that I have too many units that want weapons. Right now, my main team that I deploy usually consists of 3 to 4 units that can use swords, 4 to 5 that use lances, 1 that uses axes, 3 to 4 that use tomes, 2 to 3 that use shurikens, and 2 to 3 that use bows. My convoy and funds unfortunately just don't allow for that many weapons to get spread out evenly, so I've often had to make sacrifices to one unit for the benefit of the other. If I can get Sakura to start using the Bolt Naginata more, she'll no longer be in the pool of units that have to make big sacrifices thanks to her being the only good user of it. She'd be able to use that and allow for Rjajat, Dwyer, and Selkie to take the tomes since they need them way more. Unlike Sakura, they don't have a secondary weapon since they all just get staves instead. Unfortunately, with a map like this, there isn't too much else to add, since all of this is really slowly just killing the enemies that do no damage to my units. So once again, I will be taking my leave early. There will probably be like 1 or 2 more maps like this that are super monotonous, but otherwise this should be one of the last times where I'm on a map where there is just 0 insightful things to add about it. See you in the next part.
Midori can do this!